Hi, coaches. Welcome to our session 23. We have Sasha and Uyanga joining our live session today, and some of you have informed us that you're not able to join. Some of you are going to be late. That's completely okay. The recording will be available within the next week. So have a look and feel free to replay and review the session. So those who are watching the video, welcome. I hope this session will add value to you. This today it's going to be a little bit of a lecture time, and as well as I intend to combine it with an interactive activity. Let's see how many of us are going to be, and if not, I also would like us to have a practice session because it's also important. Right. So as we are discussing and while we are waiting for some of you to join, let's begin our session officially. All right. So right. Once again, welcome to our session 23, coaches. As you know, that I would like to let you know here again that we are hosting our award ceremony to celebrate you, to recognize you. So if you are interested and available, feel free to join us in Bangkok and participate in these beautiful activities that we are planning to host. All right. So what did we explore so far? Last week, during the last session, we started discussing just the introduction to child adolescent development from a coaching perspective, coaching structure for minor clients. And as something that we discuss, coaches, as you know, that some of you are enrolled in only the 60-hour training, some of you are long hours. However, this is a child adolescent development coaching program. So the content that we discuss here is relevant to coaching, and we look at it from coaching lens. At the same time, you understand that child development is a vast subject. One could do several PhDs on this subject, right? So it's important that as we expand our knowledge, as we learn these new concepts, expand that knowledge further. As I said during the last session, this doesn't mean in any way that you need to enroll in programs. If you can do that, that's great. At the same time, knowledge is available to us, accurate, right? Knowledge is available to us. So educate yourself. Some of you could read books, find other resources, whatever that you think is valuable for your coaching practice, for you as an individual, expand your knowledge, coaches, right? With that, today we are going to expand our conversation, our discussion on the same topic, introduction to child development. Specifically, we are going to look at the early years, the importance of early years, and also the brain development, what happens to our brain and why early years are so important, right? Okay. So as we look at introduction to child and adolescent development, let's look at some key components of child development in coaching coaches. This is something that we addressed last session. We look at several aspects that we should focus in our coaching practice as CADP coach. For example, we said understanding the child's temperament, their attachment relationships, their emotional regulation, the personality, their influential environmental influences, their brain development, learning styles, all of these things are crucial. And this is what usually we will explore during the parenting vision session, having a conversation with parents, understanding who the child is and the background. In my practice, when I speak with parents, I even ask questions about, of course, with the right boundary, with right rapport. I even tap into the pregnancy time, during the pregnancy, what was the pregnancy is like. Even when I work with an adolescent, I still talk to their parents about what was the pregnancy was like, all of that. And you will see why we need to tap into some of those areas of the development of the young person that we are working with. So this is also why, coaches, at the beginning of our training, we've talked so much about building relationship, rapport building. The reason is in order for us to tap into these sensitive areas of a family's life, we need to have that deep rapport with the person, right? We can't just sit with the person and ask about personal details about their life, because these are sensitive information. So we need to be very professional and ethical and operate within boundaries in a way that we gather enough information so that we know, we at least have a basic understanding of the story behind the child's development process. And then we also look into the key developmental aspects. And during the last session, we discussed physical, cognitive, emotional, and social development. And also other developmental aspects are sensory development, language and communication development, moral, ethical development, and creative and aesthetic development as well. Right. So looking at remembering that, coaches, what comes to your mind from our last session as we look into some of the developmental aspects that we look at, and also the key elements that as a CADP coach need to focus on? What comes to your mind from our previous session? Or let me say, what stood out to you from the previous session?
Hi, sorry, I've just joined. I didn't fully hear what the question was.
Hi, Helen. Welcome. We are just beginning the session, so we just look at the things that we discussed during the last session. The question is, what stood out to you, or what do you remember from our previous discussion as we are diving deeper into early years development today?
I'm just going to look at my notes to try to
Take your time.
remember.
Take your time. Yeah, that's okay.
So if I begin, for coach, the agreement is very important because working with minors is more like complex. So we need to be aware of it, and also we need to have a knowledge on the child's like development milestones in order to understand that the child's the behavior or the where the child is right now, and be able to advise. And also, I think last time we were more focused on self-concept and like identity and image.
Very good, Uyanga. Thank you. All right, coaches. So while you refresh your mind, I think as we dive into our conversation today, things that we discussed in the previous session also will surface. So let's combine all our learnings together. So now let me share the screen again so that you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, so as we look at these developmental aspects, today our discussion is going to be focusing on why do early years matter, right? So as we are diving into this topic, for the first thing I'm going to do is inviting you to watch a video, coaches. Now, this is a video. The doll test is a psychological experiment designed in 1940s, as you can read this on the screen. And this is so trigger warning. this could trigger certain things about racism and discrimination, and so on. As you watch this video, coaches, as you know, discrimination, racism, social injustice, these are unspoken realities in the world, right? My intention is not to bring your attention to what is wrong in the world. What I want you to focus is, what do you observe in terms of the development of the child through this video that you are going to watch? Right? What insights that would spark as you watch this video about the development of the child? Right? So I'm going to share the link here. Don't worry, it's not like a bad video to watch, like no graphics or intense. It's just a very interesting perspective, I would say. So here is the link. Have a look and let's see what you think about it. So we are looking at child development, specifically early years development, right? And we watched this interesting video, which was a psychological experiment. And we also earlier discussed the ecological systems theory as well, right? The societal, cultural, environmental, the neighborhood. In other words, society in general, the world in general, how it impacts us in ways that we don't even realize that it's being hardwired into us. Right. So enough me talking. How about you? What are your insights? I'm not expecting you to provide psychological or those insights, coaches. Facts. I'm just curious to know, what is your perspective on what we saw from the perspective of early years development?
I thought it was just really sad, and yeah, it was really surprised that children really had those prejudices so early, and that it was against themselves. And yeah, it just sort of makes you realize how strong these messages are in society. And then how what does this mean for me, like as a white person with blue eyes, and like how I can educate my child, like what does it mean about people's perceptions of me, and how can I educate my child, because he's just starting to notice these differences and ask me about them. And I think it just wasn't, no, he didn't notice it before, but it just wasn't something he particularly talked about, and it's something he's started talking about recently. And I feel like it's important to respond appropriately in educating him, but I'm not quite sure how to do it, how I should be doing it.
Yeah, I also agree. The video was very sad that the children were, when they asked which one is bad, they were pointing the ones and then which related to them. And when I was watching this video, I also had my own experience, not like racism related, but I grew up in the countryside with my grandparents. I was like having my kettles and everything. And then in neighborhood, a same age girl come from city, and she was like pretty and like, and everybody was like, oh, she's so pretty. And I had a feeling that because I grew up in the countryside, I'm no better. I'm like worse in, I don't know, in every aspect. I'm worse than her. And that perception followed my whole life. I still have like self-confidence issue because I had this prejudice, I guess, and I had self confidence issue. And then I'm from Mongolia. Mongolia is one like developing country. And then I had also, I don't know if other people also have the same, that because I'm Mongolian, I'm also no better than like maybe Americans because they are better. Those, I don't know, and this kind of thinking influences people. And only now, because I'm like learning, through learning, it becomes better because I know now the history of Mongolia and our great tradition. I'm okay. I can be proud. But these messages I received in my childhood, they stay, and they stayed for a long time. And
Thank you.
in a way, I really related myself to the children in this video.
Thank you for sharing, Rianga, for your personal experience. And so what we saw with just children, and you just spoke about how it followed you through your entire life into adulthood, and how you are, because you are self-aware, you know what's happening, and you are rewiring it back to believing that doesn't matter where you come from, you you deserve the same space as everyone else, right? So this is what I said. My intention is not to get caught up in what happened in that particular video, but like what Uyanga did, some of us have experienced these situations, may even have these behaviors manifesting in our life, thoughts, beliefs manifesting, in a dialogue manifesting in us. We might pretend or act as we are so confident or we are put together, but deep down we may have those um, distorted beliefs within us, cognitive distortions in us that may have formed in early years, right? It's very interesting because no one taught these children anything about the color of the skin, right? Coaches, please don't get me wrong when I talk about the color of skin. And I know this is a very safe space for us to discuss, address certain things like that, because let's be real. You are going to be working with individuals like this. And I think I don't know if you remember, I sent a message in the group for some weeks ago. And the child is from Thailand, mother is Thai, father is from South Asia, and the child moved to Canada in 2020. So the child looks Thai. So the father is from India, so the child looks Thai, Indian, um, and lives in Canada. And right now, his biggest problem is confidence and self-esteem because he's being bullied for what he looks like, what he sounds like, and everything. And his father, um, he is a CEO, and they come from a very wealthy family. But does it matter? It doesn't matter. And they are very good parents, very attuned. That's why they want to work with a professional and provide that support, right? And what I am trying to emphasize here is it's not just the family, it's not just the parents, it's also the environment, it's also the society, it's also the media, especially for today's children. right? What they are exposed to. This is what I said at the beginning. No one's made these children sit down and taught them that black is this, white is this, and yellow is. No one taught them, right? They just learned. Sasha, anything to add?
Yes, I really liked, I think the last boy already had the awareness that the questions were not appropriate. So I think that's the key, to empower the kids. Yes, it's also to improve the systems and the way things work, but also to empower the kids from within so that they can withstand such pressures and prejudices. So that they also distinguish perhaps between what is a doll and what is a child as a person. So that they can connect their identity to something else, not just race or color, or that they are beyond that. And I think it doesn't, at least when I speak for my country, it's not always about race or color, also about class. So the amount of money that the family has, so that also influences the child and the way the child is raised. So I think just to empower kids to see beyond that, even if the society sees them like that, so that they don't see themselves as that.
I love that, Sasha. I truly, truly love that insight. Because at the end of the day, societal change, systematic change is not some one person can do. It can do, one person can do, but changing myself. If 10 people are empowered, imagine 10 of you working with 10 individuals. That means 10 empowered adults. And that is the generation that we are cultivating. That's how we change the system, coaches, because this is why I said, let's not get caught up in the racism or the discrimination. That's not the point, because that's not something, that's a truth, that's a reality. It's not something that we are going to wake up in the morning and going to be gone. They are going to change through generation. But what we don't realize is the generation is not outside of us. We are the generation. We are the generation. Our children are the next generation. So when we look at systematic change, societal change in world at large, when we talk about world peace, I just can't get this out of my mind, what Mother Teresa said. It's exactly what Sasha said in different words. How do you want to contribute to world peace? Go home and love your family. That's how we create world peace. So from what Sasha shared, we can't change the world, but we can change ourselves. We can change how we raise our child, right? So your responsibility when you work with parents, families, children, catalyze that empowerment. That's why you look at the ecology of parenting, not to understand the nitty-gritty details and the little gossip. That's not the point. This is why I keep saying, coaches, when you look at the ecology of their system, you provide that elevated perspective to them so they realize, oh my God, my child is growing up in a society like this, and I need to consciously, deliberately wire my child so that they are empowered. And when they go out there to the real world as an adult, when the world throw that discrimination at them or the racism at them, they know that it doesn't matter whether I grew up in, it doesn't matter, because as a person, I trust myself. I am whole and complete. I am me. Doesn't matter. Right? So that's the empowerment that we are cultivating. And that's why, coaches, you are understanding the child development so that you can catalyze that process. Imagine if you don't know how the system works. So in order to create a change in the system, first we need to understand the system, right? So this is the importance of learning these concepts. All right. So thank you for creating that insightful discussion, coaches, with that video. For those who are watching the video later, I will have the video available below the first part of this video. So please have a look and then get back to the rest of the lesson. All right, coaches. So let's continue with our presentation. Now that as we look at this video and we understood that the development is going on whether we interact or not, influence or not, right? And as professional coaches, understanding early years is important, although you might not be working with young children. However, you might be working with expectant parents, right? You might be working with some individuals like that. So you can educate them, and you also know what is this client is going through, the developmental stage. Also, let's say you are working with an 18-year-old, a minor still, or you are working with someone who is 75 years old. They were not born yesterday. They also had early years, right? They also had an impact that occurred that shaped who they are when they are 18, or whether they are 14, or whether they are 85 years old. And that's why, coaches, the importance of understanding early years. So this is why I said when I work with parent, regardless of the age of the child, I make a point to understand, at least gain a basic understanding of what was the pregnancy like, what was the early years experiences were like. That's why I gave you that 16 points, and we can keep, if you know more, we can add to it more, right? Understanding these aspects is important. So as we look at early years development, let us bring our attention, our focus to the brain development in the early years. This is what we need to really, really focus on. So I thought let us go through different key phases of the brain development so that we understand what is really going on, why the early years are so crucial, right? So as I said, coaches, we are only tapping into these topics briefly, given the short time we have. So please feel free to dig deep and learn more about these topics. So as we look at the key phases of the brain development, coaches, very first one we are looking at is the prenatal period, which is the before birth, right? So we discussed, if you remember, we watched the baby Olivia video during our last session. So as I said, we were not born just yesterday, right? We were just microscopic cell at one point in our life. That's where it all began. And we said all that knowledge for us to become this full human being, all that knowledge was stored in that just one cell, right? And that's how the natural intelligence of this universe works. And it always within us. And that's why coaching is powerful, because we already have the answers within us. Imagine if our bodies knew how to put itself together without any external influences, interference. Everything else is also within us. It's a matter of we bringing that, tapping into that inherent consciousness within us, right? So when we look at the prenatal period before birth, what happens to our brain? The brain start developing during the first trimester. As you know that the first trimester can be about 13 weeks, and within 5 to 8 weeks, we start developing vital organs like the heart, the brain, the spinal cord, the digestive system, and so on. And some of you have been mothers, so you know that this period is very critical. This is the time the mother experiences morning sickness and all of that. And we know that as the embryo, everything that mother consumes, starting from food to beverages, to her emotions, to her thinking, everything impact that embryo in the womb, right? Especially imagine how the mother's nutrition should be, how well taken care of she should be as she's carrying this new life being formed inside of her. knowing that the little heart is being developed, that little brain cell is being developed, right? That impacts everything else in life afterwards. That's where it began. So when we think about brain development of a human being, it's not just after birth. Brain development happens before birth, right? So this is why, coaches, prenatal period is so very important. So if you're working with parents, expectant parents, pregnant mothers, educate them about these facts so that they know how to take care of them. If you have if you want, prepare a little presentation of what happened. This is what I do usually in my practice. When I work, depending on my client, I walk them through, this is where you are, and this is what happens to the brain of the child, and just briefly some insights that they feel like, oh, I did not know about this. This is, and also coaches, those who are looking at this from a marketing perspective, this could be your marketing content as well. Like if you're creating social media content, writing a blog post, reaching out to others, hosting parenting groups. For example, in few weeks, I'm going to give a speech or kind of a workshop speech, something like that, to a group of pregnant moms, about 15 to 20 moms. And one of my topics would be the brain development of the child, right? So that they understand. And this is the way of so when I speak about these topics, some of these individuals realize, oh, I don't know about this. Working with someone like her, a professional like this would be beneficial. So this is also way of how I spread the word about my profession, coaches. So look at it also from that perspective. Right. So come back to the brain development. So remember that the brain develops before even the child is born, right? And then neural connections start forming, which we call neurogenesis, with the brain stem, and basic survival functions like our heartbeat, breathing, all these things develop early. And then, so this is why, coaches, the environmental factors, like we said earlier, maternal nutrition plays a huge role. We know that for our brain to develop, our brain needs protein, right? So how much protein does she take? How much sleep does the mother get? How does her movements, how active is she? And the supplements that she takes, how much breathing, oxygen that the mother receives, or the quality of oxygen, all of these things matter, coaches, and the amount of water that we drink, right? So if you are talking to parents, if you are creating content, include some of this knowledge. So during this time, the stress level the mother is exposed to, the toxins, for example, alcohol, drugs. So we will see that some adults have brain certain difficulties, dysfunctions, and we might not know the reason. And it could be it's because the mother was exposed to certain toxics, or it could be certain drugs or alcohol, could be anything, radiation, whatever it is. It's because something that impacted the brain development in the womb, right? So the person is grown up and they have these difficulties, but they don't even know where they came from, because it's not something that occurred in childhood, but it's something that occurred in the womb. So imagine, we have no control whatsoever. Absolutely not. So you see, it's not easy to be a child. And think about it, how vulnerable we are during these developmental stages, knowing that we have no control of our development whatsoever. Isn't that fascinating? And we can't control our experiences as a child, right? And then we look at the next phase, which is the infancy. We look at birth to 12 months, right? So coaches, I'm going a little faster, but I will stop in between and we will create a discussion, those who have children. I invite you to reflect your insights. Is there anything shows up? Does something else come up about your pregnancy? What are your experiences and so on? So let me just walk through this and then I will stop. We have a discussion, go for a break, and then we come back, right? Okay, so we are looking at infancy, which is birth to 12 months. Now, it's so interesting. Our brain is about 25% of its adult size, and it grows by age 3 for up to 80%. That's how fast our brains grow. It's truly what a fascinating organic machine, if I may say it like that. And so the process called, which I said earlier, the neurogenesis, which is the formation of neurons, this happens just before birth, right? So the neurogenesis occur before birth, and these neurons start to make connections after birth, right? So during the prenatal stage, the neurogenesis happens, and then after birth, these neurons start to connect. So you see, it's an ongoing process. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. We have no control over it. No one is doing it. It's happening by itself, right? The brain, it's so interesting to think that our brain is constructing by itself to the point that it named itself. When you think about it, the brain named itself. So interesting. Right. So then we look at, so earlier we look at the neurogenesis, and then we are looking at synapses, which is the connection between nerves. So this is what we say, the neurons that fire together, wire together. It's a very interesting process that happens in our brain, which makes life possible. And this happens at a very rapid pace, particularly focusing on the sensory and motor areas of the brain. And this is why if you look at the cognitive development theory, Piaget's cognitive development theory, during this age, the child is in sensory motor stage. So senses, motory, movements, right? So these two in combination, focusing, the synapses are being developed, which is a very crucial process of the brain. And interesting thing about our synapses, coaches, these neuroconnections, I know some of these words for some of you could be new as you are learning some of these concepts for the first time, coaches. So please rewatch the video and do your own little research so that you can understand them better and remember them better, right? So other fascinating thing about our neuroconnections is these synapses we call, those that are not being used, right? Unused synapses, those neurons that don't fire together are being removed, being eliminated to make the brain more efficient. And this is an ongoing process, coaches. So this is why we say, sometimes if we didn't use language for a long time, we tend to forget it, right? This is why the more we do something, the more we practice something, the stronger our neural pathways become. But if we don't use them, they just brain assume that we don't need them. Therefore, they are being eliminated so that the brain's purpose is, the reason why brain does it is to make it more efficient. And this start happening around age 1. So this is why, coaches, all of these reasons, the early years experiences can strongly have an impact or influence this wiring based on touch, sound, interaction, sensory, language, everything, communication, relationship, all of these things influence strongly the brain wiring. Now, so as we observe that video, this is what we say. No one taught those children that this color is this, that color is that. But by being exposure to certain things, they learned that, oh, this is what it means. And it has an impact on their sense of self. Now, I would like us to bring our attention to the concept of absorbent mind, which is discussed in the Montessori philosophy. So if you, as you're watching the videos, previous videos, at the beginning of the course, we discuss some aspects of the Montessori philosophy, and something that we discuss or tap into is the absorbent mind. So Dr. Maria Montessori described absorbent mind as the child's capacity to absorb knowledge, skills, experiences, language, inputs directly from the surrounding without any effort, just by observation, which is very natural to our human nature, imitation. If you see little children, you see how much they like to imitate, they role play, they pretend play, right? They like to imitate, imitation, and interaction. If you notice, if you have worked with a little child, if you have with little child, you know how much interaction they need, how much questions they ask you, right? How curious they are. They are curious about everything. That's the nature of the beginner's mind, curiosity. It's inherent. It's so powerful that we are inherently possess this beautiful skill, ability to be curious, to observe. That's what makes consciousness possible, isn't it? So Dr. Montessori described, so by observation, limitation, and interaction, right? So this means this is what Dr. Montessori called sponge-like capacity of the child's mind. What does that mean? Regardless whether it's poison liquid, whether it's milk, water, whatever it is, as long as it's a liquid, a sponge would absorb it. And the child's mind is exactly like that. Whatever you put in front of that child to their experience, whoop, they absorb it like the vacuum. Very interesting. So Dr. Maria Montessori described this as the creative energy, and this is unique to children, especially in their early years. And this is how having this ability is what makes understanding the world possible. Helen, did anyone want to say anything? No. Okay, sorry. So
sorry, I
if we
think that
look
was me when I joined.
Oh,
Sorry,
hi,
I think
Victoria.
that was me,
Nice to have
Victoria.
you.
Hi. Hi. Sorry, I'm late. I'm
Don't
sorry. When I
worry.
joined, the mic was automatically open, so you heard sounds.
No problem at all. Welcome. We are just addressing the brain development of early years. We have looked at two phases of the brain development, and now we are looking at the absorbent mind. It wasn't too much. You can catch up with that, right? So as we are looking at the absorbent mind, coaches, so what are the qualities? Why is this like a? So I would say my view on absorbent mind, this sponge-like capacity of our brain, our mind is, it's like, think about it like this, coaches. It's like, to me, it's like a knife that cut both sides. Because of this ability to absorb without filtering, it can also be dangerous, right? So you will see why when we look at the quality of our beginner's mind, our absorbent mind. Our absorbent mind is effortless. This is why this means children can absorb information naturally without teaching at all. No need formal teaching at all. This is why we say children do not learn what we teach them. They learn what they live, especially in their childhood, early childhood. Right? It's because this effortless quality in this absorbent mind. So anything that the child is in the environment, they absorb it without any filtering. Dr. Montessori calls this, it's like, imagine you take a picture and the camera doesn't filter out anything in the environment, think, oh, that tree doesn't look good in this photo. Let me remove the tree. It doesn't do that stuff, right? I don't know, maybe new technology can do that, but if you look at a traditional old camera, especially in her time, It doesn't have all those filtering stuff. It just captures exactly what's in front of it. And our mind is exactly like that. And this is why I said it can be very dangerous. And it's unconscious. It doesn't, this absorption doesn't happen with the child's awareness. It's not that the child thinks, oh, let me just absorb only this, how loving my parents are, and let's ignore the other part. No, it doesn't work like that. Everything that's in front of them, they just absorb unconsciously. And also, this is why, like if we look at the effortlessness, if we go back to the point, you will see that how we learn to walk, why we have this accent, the language development. We did not, as a child, we did not sit and learn to put words together. It just happened. Walking is also like that. One day you stood up and you took your first steps, your brain figured out, oh, if I move like that, I can go from A to B. Let me do that one more time. It learned, it fell, it cried, it felt hurt, it was confused about that sensation. It got up, walked again, fell again, walked again, fell again, and then it became just flow. One day the child just walked. No one taught them. This is how effortless our learning, information and wiring at that age. And then, of course, it's unique to the early age, but this doesn't mean the neuroplasticity of or the absorbing energy, information stops at early stage, coaches, but think of it as a molding, a block of clay that you can literally mold it around. That's how fragile, that's how moldable it is, right? It's during that age. So parents who are expecting to have children, parents with young children, very important information to know, right? To talk to them about how their behavior impact this capacity of the brain, so that they understand their interactions have an impact of what is being molded, what is being imprinted. So you see, coaches, the reason why I said this is dangerous, it's like a knife that cut both sides. If the child is exposed to great experiences, that's what the brain learned. For example, if the child is born in a family where the parents have, I mean, of course, every parent fight. No parents is ever expected to be flawless and have all the answers and put together. No one is going to be like that. But some parents are more conscious. They know that I'm going to have a go with my partner today. So let me leave my child in a place so I can have it properly with my partner. But my child is protected from that interaction, right? So, and these individuals communicate consciously, interact with the child consciously, knowing that there is an impact, right? So the child who grows up in an environment where the parents are conscious, parents are authoritative, have good structure, their brain development have a certain type of support in growing. And then let's say a child whose parents, maybe a mother or the father, is emotionally unstable. Maybe they are fighting an invisible battle like depression, undiagnosed mental health issues, or they are suffering a loss of a family member, or they are suffering a difficult relationship, or they are suffering a dysfunctional families. As you know, some cultures, some people live with many relatives in their families. So these dynamics can create changes in the family environment. So a child grow up in an environment like that, their exposure to life is completely different. Or a child that's being neglected because the parent has to work 3 times, right? Let's say this parent is a widow. They don't have any familial support, so they have to work 3 times, three jobs, right? So the child is being neglected. Is that the parent's fault? Of course not. The parent also has to provide for the child. So it's what it is, but you see that it has an impact on the development of the child, right? So this is what we need to understand, coaches. Parenting is extremely difficult. but it is not about us at the end of the day. It is about the child. This is what I also mentioned to my parenting clients. It's true that you are struggling, but we did make this conscious choice to bring this life to this world. And despite all these challenges, it is a responsibility for us to be attuned and available to that child's growth needs, because without it, they can't provide these developmental needs without their caregiver, without conscious caregiving. And this is why conscious caregiving is absolutely crucial. We are going to look into the toddler years, but before that, I know that we have been talking a little bit. So I would like to hear your thoughts, insights, anything that you would like to add, any questions, and then we go for a break after that. Over to you, coaches.
I have a question. About this in a way. I missed a lot, so maybe this was covered before. But so I mean, and I think colleagues know that my topic is early development. That's where I want to build my focus. So exactly from 0 to 6 years. So I understand the importance of it. That's what even got me into this whole coaching and parenting. What I found is that when provided with this information of how much kids learn, not just from things we say, things we do, how everything is so important, they're absorbing everything. Many parents have I want to say, knee-jerk reaction to fall into guilt, especially if their kids is closer to the end of that treatment. And kind of go into, what have I done? I didn't know this before. Or even if their child is very young, then put so much pressure on them, as if every moment matters and every moment counts. And like, what have we done? Sorry, I have something right behind my head. How do you, with your clients, what like, maybe a practice question for from your practice, coaching practice, what do you usually do with the client that which, when provided with this information, have this extensive opposite reactions? So before it was like, nothing's going to happen if I do this, that, and then you provide them with the absorbing mind information, and then it's like so much. What do you do? What do you do then? How do you help them find the middle, find the balance, understand that, okay, so many things are important, but one time you fought with your partner, you haven't traumatized the child, most likely, right? We never know, but most likely you haven't. And it's more about little repetitive things that it was wrong.
Yeah, what a great question, Victoria. Thank you, because I'll be honest, most people have the opposite reaction. That's what they get. Because most of them start realizing, oh my God, the damage is done. There now I can't undo it. Then immediately go into the guilt, because why? They are already feeling guilty before they even come, because they know what they're doing is yelling at the child is not it's not how they want to do it. It's not that they don't know, right? It's just that they don't know there is a better way. So one of the very first things that before we break this kind of information or provide education to parents, I think we addressed this before you joined, Victoria, but it's absolutely important that we address this. The rapport between the coach and the parent. This is so important, because think about it, receiving information like this from someone that you don't trust or you don't have good rapport with, it could actually backfire. It can trigger certain things, right? So we need to, first of all, make sure that we have good relationship with the client, and then creating that psychological safety. What does that mean? Before you present the educational piece, if you know that this could be triggering, warn them, right? Warning them that something that I am going to show you, this educational piece, might even trigger you. That's okay. We can explore that, right? You might, as you are learning this piece, there will be certain emotions, certain feelings that will show up. Let us explore, bringing the curiosity with compassion, Victoria. So if you remember that I do not encourage compassion in coaching, because we don't need to be compassionate to our clients. They are not poor or poor as in like we don't have to feel sorry for our client. But we know that when we address sensitive topics like that, we need empathy, but we also need to bring the client to a place of self-compassion, right? So when we, especially, let's say, this is something that, for example, let's say attachment. If you're introducing attachment styles, the parent might realize, oh my God, I did not interact, I did not do this and that, and what does that mean to me? So explain to them that as we look at this, you may see things that you didn't do, or you may experience certain feelings. Let's note them down. Let's address them. So creating a space for whatever is going to show up, Victoria, right? And then addressing them at a deeper level. So this is why ICF, especially at PCC level, emphasize on the coach's ability to be vulnerable with the client. This doesn't mean that, oh, I'm going to go down the line with the client and share my story. That's not being vulnerable means. Being vulnerable, the coach's ability to be vulnerable means being able to hold that space. Because for you to ask questions like that, it makes you vulnerable. When the client is going to experience such intense emotion, it is going to make you vulnerable. So the coach's ability to be vulnerable and hold that emotional container to the client, and curiosity, bringing the curiosity, not a single sense of judgment in there, right? Validate the client's emotion. This is where you need to learn to validate the client's emotions, providing feedback. This is where we also learn how to provide feedback in a way that it doesn't break the client, but rather it's constructive. So if the client is experiencing this emotional reaction, let it happen. And then invite them to a place of reflection and observe what this means. And educating, or kind of letting them know in advance that this is possible and it's okay. Validate the emotion. It's okay to feel guilty. It's understandable to feel guilty. Now that you have understood that you feel guilty about it, what does that mean for you? How do you reverse this now? And the good thing is always highlighting that repairing is possible. The reason why they go into panic and guilt is because they feel like, oh my God, I have ruined my child's life. That's what they think, right?
Yeah, because in terms of attachment, when you say what you've done till the age of one, you have the attachment, the basis of attachment. So that's it. You can repair, but still the basis, it's not. So,
Exactly. At the same time, explaining to them, but the repairing is possible too. It's about what do we do from now on. So when you explain the brain, specifically if you are educating about brain, as much as you show the impact, also show them how the brain is, our brain is so flexible and adaptable, and the neuroplasticity, so that they know. Yeah, highlight those things that bring hope to them. Show them that, no, this is why you are working with me. For example, so one of the examples, when parents come to me, one of the biggest problem is, I yell too much at my child. And their expectation, the psychological expectation is, by working with me, they will never yell at their child. Never yell at their child. And I tell them, and I usually have good rapport with them, and my essence is different with them. I tend to be a bit playful, and I tell them, I'm sorry to disappoint you or break this news. I don't have a magic wand. This doesn't mean that you are never going to yell at your child. It's impossible. And they go like, then what's the point of me working with you? That's why I'm here with you. But then I tell them, but I will show you, I will help you to develop strategies when you yell, how you can immediately repair it. This doesn't mean that you're going to get a free pass so that you can be yelling at your child and repairing it, but there are tools and techniques. I know that I went a bit broader, but how do you take the answer, Victoria?
yeah, I love it. Thank you. I think there's a lot of wisdom in it, and I can't wait to implement it times to see how it goes.
Yeah, great. Okay, so over to all of you coaches. We have 3 more phases to go, but also we will look at the neuroplasticity very little bit today. Anything else that you would like to add before we go for a break?
It's just nice to think about it as a mum, like think back to that first year and all the things that they learn, and you know, all of those changes, all of those things that happened. Like it's it's nice to think about it, and sort of you look at pictures and things, and it seems so long ago, and sometimes it just seems like a different child and a different person, a different time. So it's just nice to think about it again and to be reminded of it. And yeah, I can definitely identify, definitely think, oh, it's such a responsibility, and you can't possibly do it all perfectly. And there's things where I think, oh, I should have done this when my son was younger. I should have, yeah. But like you said, nobody can be perfect. It's just about, and repair is possible. It's just about how we move forward.
Exactly, Helen. Nobody's perfect, and especially parents. They are not perfect. How can anyone be perfect, isn't it? And we are all going to make mistakes. And also, every child is different. Every family is different. This is what I also believe, that cookie cutter approaches doesn't work in parenting, because everyone is different. Everyone is going to make different types of mistakes. It's about being compassionate and having that self-awareness, and also the coach's ability to help the client tap into that self-compassion. Yes, I did it because I am a human being too, right? Like, for example, if the client is going into the guilt, remind them why they were not being able to do that. For example, I would say, yes, you were not able to be present to your child for 5 hours because you had to work 2 jobs. So compassion, bringing in those reasons and making them feel that they are not alone. Because the truth is, coaches, parents already feel that they are failing, that they are already feeling that they are not a good enough parent, or they wish they could do better, or they could be a different parent than the parent they had. They are carrying unspoken struggles. And our job is to ease it out, not to make things even more complicated, right? So, yeah. Sasha?
Maybe just to share an interesting fact, because I have identical twins. So one is left-handed, one is right-handed. One is artistically gifted, the other one's a speaker. So the brain development just went in different areas. So I just try to encourage their gifts, but they're in different areas, despite being identical. So I think that's really interesting, and I just go with the flow where I see them thrive.
So beautiful, right? Although they both share the same womb, same mom, everything, and they both receive the same amount of nutrition, everything the same, but the cells decided, no, I'm going to be this and I'm going to be that. So it's a real miracle when you think. When I think about it, I can't stop thinking about it sometimes. What a miracle! This entire creation, that a human come to life, human come to being. What a miracle it is, truly. Okay, coaches. So I know that I can go on about this, but I'm also being mindful of the time. Let's take a 10 minutes break, and then when we come back, we continue with our lesson. All right. See you in 10. Sorry, I will just say again. Hi, coaches. Welcome back. I hope you are. I hope you enjoyed your break. I was just speaking with Oyanga if there were any insights. If not, it's okay.
Just also the fact So I live in Ulaanbaatar, which is very polluted during the winter time. So when I was pregnant with my daughter, we went under the project, which started during my pregnancy until today. We are under the observation of the experts. So what they did is they measured the pollution in the different areas, and then they picked women in different areas, and then checked when the children were born, how was their weight, and also at age 4, I think we went through examination of the mental like development, problem solving and like the speech, language development, those kind of treatment. And now the papers are already published based on these studies. And then the children in less polluted areas, they are more brain and the problem solving more developed than the children in the polluted areas. So it's like proven that the air pollution has impact on the brain development of the children from the pregnant days.
Wow, thank you for sharing, Vyanga. That is really eye-opening research, isn't it? It's very eye-opening data. So you see, environmental factors
Mhm.
like nowadays, Bangkok is
Yeah,
experiencing the really air pollution is so bad that we cannot even think of opening a window. So I was just thinking about as I was preparing the lesson, I was thinking like, wow, environmental factors we're talking about it, and look at outside and all that impact on the pregnant mothers and the development of the child. Yeah. So these are things that we cannot avoid. So you see, coaches, sometimes when we work with parents, one of the things that um, we need to also remember, there are circumstances that they cannot change, right? So, and that's why you are there so that you can help them understand, you can assist them in understanding what does this mean to me now, right? Does that mean that I need to change the country? What does that really think about it? What does that mean to a person that who is um, raising a child, right? So yeah, so thank you for sharing, and let's tap into our next topic, coaches. Okay, so now we are looking at the next phase of the brain development, which is the toddlerhood, right? And you know what I'm talking about if you have a toddler, if you have ever worked with a toddler, if you have ever associated toddler, you know how they are and how curious their little minds are, and how much they want to move, how much they want to explore. I really see them as little scientists, so curious, so observant, full of wonder and questions. And during my entire career, as you know, I also used to work as an active early educator in the classroom as a Montessori educator. And my favorite age to work with was age 1 to 3. Just I was marveled. I was awed by their development. I learned it was a huge learning curve for me. I learned so much from them. I learned just observing them, especially those who, develop language. They will come to the classroom and they will pretend certain scenarios from their family. They would say things that they heard from their home. And not just that, they will also repeat things they heard from the class. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, that sounds like me. How is that possible? But then you see, and that's the unconscious, the nature of the absorbent mind. They don't even have to be around you. They listen, right? So I remember in my very first early years of training, one of the lecturers the professor said that you need to think of yourself as an octopus. How the octopus has, I forgot what do you call it? Not the arms,
Tentacles.
what is it, Helen?
Ten
Tentacles,
tentacles.
yes. Tentacles. I forgot the word again. So learning English. So tentacles, it's like you need to have hands around your body, and not just that, you also need to have eyes around all over your body. I was like, what does this mean? I don't think this profession is for me. But then I very soon realized what it meant. But then as I continued to expand my education in child psychology, I learned, oh, what she meant, I need to have eyes around my body, not just to be physically present, physically observe the child, or just to prevent them damage or harm. It's so much more than what my professor meant at the time. I need to be able to be attuned to that child, not just physical needs, but also the emotional needs. And then I realized, oh, this is so much deeper than I thought. So, yeah. So now when we look at the toddler years coaches from 1 to 3, as we know that we discussed that during the prenatal time, the neurogenesis happens, the formation of neurons, and then after birth, takes the synapses occurs, which is the connection between neurons, and the density, the synapse density peak around when they are age 3 with about 1 million neuron connections forming per second. So just imagine how rapidly, how quickly our brain develops. So this is the reason why during this age, the children are curious, they are explorative, they need to experience things in order to learn, so that they can absorb as much constructive information as possible. And then we look at the prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision making, self-regulation, which is part of our executive functioning. And this start developing during this time, but it's still very immature. So when we say executive functioning skills, they are not necessarily able to yet critically think, logically think, make decisions, because their brain is not fully developed that part. So they can't do that, right? So making sense to a child at that age, expecting them to make sense through logic, it doesn't work like that. So when we expect them to sit still, follow instructions, follow orders, and expect them to do things that we want to do, they can't do it. It's not because they are misbehaving, or they are bad children, or uh, it's not, none of that. It's because of their developmental stage in their brain. At the same time, it's important that we are aware to understand or recognize if there are any developmental disorders, delays, and so on. And this is why I said, coaches, if you are interested in becoming a parenting child development specialist, or a therapist working with children, minors, and so on, this is why understanding in depth how the brain works, all of these things important, because when you train yourself further, you also learn how to recognize certain developmental disorders, delays, and so on, so that we can address this with parents. However, as CADP coaches, we are not going to do any of that. We are not going to recognize developmental disorders, delays, and so on, and prescribe anything, diagnose anything. We are not going to do any of that. This is why I said having a supervisor, could be a clinical child psychologist who has experience, who knows what they're talking about, not just child psychological perspective, but also from a clinical perspective. It's very important to have this understanding coaches. In my practice, I do work with a clinical psychologist who is also an MCC. I just need that supervision. So it's very, very important that we look at certain aspects at a deeper level, things that we are not fully able to understand, right? And then this is the time also the limbic system is developed, which involves, as you know, our emotions and memory. And this grows rapidly as other parts of the brain, affecting especially the emotional responses and attachment. So earlier, when we look at the early stage of the first year of the child, we said we look at it from the Piaget's cognitive development perspective, which is the sensory motor stage. So here, as we look at the limbic system development, which impact the emotional responses and attachment and the association, we are looking at the psychosocial developmental stages, Erickson's, and we are looking at trust and mistrust, which is a huge part of the attachment system in the brain. So during this age, depending on the caregiver and the child's interaction, how attuned the caregiver was to the child, defines a lot of relationship behavior, dynamics, associations to the child, to themselves, to the people around. Especially this can manifest in romantic relationships. So, for example, when I work with adult clients, individuals who have romantic relationship challenges, for example, let's say some individuals are extremely anxious in relationships. I work with this lady who is, according to societal standards, she has a very high position in corporate and very successful, right? According to societal standard, because we all have different meaning what success means. For her, financially, professionally, very successful. At the same time, when it comes to romantic relationships, a disaster. Very, very clingy. She tends to become very clingy, very needy. It seems like, without any disrespect or shame, it's almost that the chase and the run. So she chooses partners who are emotionally unavailable, distance, who avoid these interactions, close intimacy with her. So the guy runs the moment they have this interest develop. The guy distance himself and she chased the man. She chased the partner, right? It's not because that she doesn't understand this is not constructive behavior, but she just cannot stop that. And then we look at her previous relationships, all same. And she said to me recently, it's like it's the same experience, but different body. It's exactly the same feeling I receive from this person. I'm always attracted to unavailable people. Why is that? And it makes me so anxious all the time. And it makes me feel like I'm unlovable. I'm difficult to love. I don't deserve love. What is happening to me? So one of the aspects that we addressed in that engagement, as you know, I'm a trauma-informed coach, so I work with certain elements like that individuals face in their life. So we look at her attachment styles, and of course, we recognize that there are complications in that developmental stages, especially her relation to her father. It's not that the father was unlovable, person who like abusive or anything, but because of his career, very successful businessman, so he was always away, and her relationship with her father was inconsistent, which left her craving for his attention and so on. So it's very complicated, coaches. On the other hand, there are individuals who avoid relationships at all, close intimacy at all. When someone becomes close to them, they feel suffocated. They feel like, no, they take my independence away. They are hyper independent. So there are very interesting, complex relationship behaviors in our romantic relationships specifically. And if we tap into the deeper core essence of where these problems stem from, it goes down to early years, things that they don't even remember, right? This is why early years are so important. So Victoria, I completely see the value of your question. So when we address facts like this, educational pieces like this, for example, let's say you are already working with a adolescent who's passed all these stages already, right? Now the parent might realize, oh, during the attachment system developing the child's that time, I was not available. I was not consistent. So what do I do about it now? How do I repair that? Right? So a lot of emotional validation, compassion, self-reflection, self-awareness, is empathy is crucial when you address emotions, conversations like that. Also, coaches, something that we need to be very mindful of is when addressing topics like this, being detached from the conversation, because the chances are some of us also may have experienced certain things like this in our childhood,